Hey everyone, Ned Baker here. This video is going to be some of my training footage from the year 2019. This is an edit I made that year, and I'm just going to voice over and give some tips, advice, and just some of my general thoughts on it all. If you're not interested, cool. Go watch one of my other videos. But if you are, thank you, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more things like this. Alright, let's get into it. So here we have my first time ever squatting with weights. This is just awful looking back on this. If you ever look back on your own training, you'll probably have a laugh, but it's good to see how far you've come. Okay, so now we have me doing a 25 kilo pull-up and failing on the second. Just for reference, I can now do 50 kilo chin-ups 2 years later. So you put in the time, you put in the consistency, and that's how you get stronger. Okay, here's me doing some levers. I've always been good at levers, probably due to my gymnastics background. I've had to work a lot harder on things like planches and even handstand push-ups. As you can see here, I'm doing the supinated back lever, which I spoke about in my last video. My front lever was alright, but not great. Archer pull-ups. These are an amazing exercise to help you get the one-arm pull-up. In this video I did 4 each side, but I got super fatigued by the time I moved to my second arm and just kind of did a regular pull-up and kind of just pushed it away at the end. For skills as hard as this, I would recommend not going to fatigue and staying fresh. Back to the squats. This time it looks like I go a little bit lower, but yeah, this kind of stuff is still very hard to watch, especially because it was like the first time ever doing these, so it's always going to be hard to watch, but as I said, it's good to see how far you progressed over the time. 2019 was also the year I went hard with the bent arm planche. I found the perfect progression for this exercise and got strong on it quite quickly. So at the start of 2020 I made a YouTube video, and it's my most popular video at this point. Now here's my first ever straddle planche. I can now do that for 10 seconds, and at this point my front levers were coming along pretty well. And here's my first time ever trying single leg front lever pull-ups. I can do tucked front lever rows, but I never actually tried the single leg. And full front lever pull-up is now one of my training goals. Now this exercise was a cool one-arm pull-up drill that I saw somewhere, and wanted to try it out. The cool thing about gymnastics or calisthenics or bodyweight strength training is you can do cool stuff like this and show off your strength in public. And here I try some sort of combo. So I do this bad, weird swinging press to handstand, a terrible handstand hold, this weird looking half handstand push up, back to a terrible handstand hold, and then I try and lower into a planche and just collapse. Okay, so this is a handstand with my head in or my chin on my chest. If you're quite good with handstands and 30-second holds are easy, start learning some shapes and putting your head in. This really makes balancing harder, but will help your balance dramatically in the long run. Single bar handstands when first learning are extremely difficult. It's very different to a regular handstand or even a handstand on parallettes. But again, with time and consistency and putting in the effort, you can get there. So single bar handstands now for me are quite easy. And then here's just me doing a handstand and working on my shape. I realized the straddle planche was way too hard for me, so I found a progression that was a bit easier, but also harder than the tuck, called the frog. Also, my bent arm planche was really starting to come along. If you want to see the exact progressions I used for that and how I got so strong at it, check out my bent arm planche tutorial. This here is a brilliant rings routine for beginners, and it's actually one of the exact routines that I used in my beginner rings video. So if you've got rings and want a little routine to get started, work on this and I guarantee you'll see your strength improve in all areas. Moving on from that, we now have one of my press to handstands. So they weren't very consistent at this phase. I could kind of do them, it just wasn't great. This next collection of videos is my first ever YouTube video I filmed. I was quite good at front levers and often gave people tips and advice. And then a mate of mine said to just put a front lever tutorial up on YouTube, and I wasn't sure about it, but I went ahead and that's how it all started. This here is a great exercise called Yuki's. It's a fantastic way to build front lever strength, but also front lever rowing strength at the same time. I was such a YouTube noob at this point that I filmed everything in portrait and then realized I had to go back and film it all again, but in landscape. The 2nd of June 2019, I filmed a bunch of exercises for my front lever video, and I surprised myself with how quickly I got fatigued. And stupidly, I did the hardest exercises at the end. So I was just completely exhausted by that point. The front lever pull to this day is still one of my favorite exercises of all time. I still incorporate this in my training as it's a great way to work that full range of motion front lever. I still couldn't do the straddle planche, but I read somewhere that straddle planche push-ups were a bit easier, so I gave them a go, and I don't think I realized how hard it actually was. I mean, my form here isn't terrible, but it's definitely not great. Here I'm working on my handstand push-up form. I was working on getting deeper because before this I hadn't really gone deep enough in my handstand push-up, and there's a little cameo from my dog Grover. 2 days later I thought I'd give the straddle planche push-ups another crack, and it's maybe slightly better but pretty similar. Back to more front lever stuff. I still had a fair bit to film, and I found this beautiful calisthenics park where I ended up refilming pretty much the entire video. The 360-degree lever pull. It's a wonderful demonstration of strength and shoulder flexibility. It is the ultimate variation in skin the cat. This is a similar version, but instead of going all the way down, you stop, hold the lever, and pull back up. So it's a little bit more difficult, especially with the front lever portion. Moving on to this iron cross attempt. This is actually my big goal at the moment. This is a cross machine on the easiest setting, and I really struggled with it. 2 years later, I'm getting close. This here is a fantastic drill to work your planche, and also if you're doing Maltese. You can do a straight leg version, which is harder, or a straddled version, which is easier. Here's me failing again on a straddle planche. If you want to see my 2.5 year straddle planche progression, check out this video right here. And here my handstand shape is actually looking quite nice. I'm surprised I had this good a handstand in 2019. My first ever 90-degree handstand push-up. I couldn't believe getting this. All that bent arm planche work and handstand push-up strength just made me get this easily. And then I tried an L-sit on the rings. Now the reason this was so difficult and I was shaking so much was because my hands were turned out. So turning your hands out on the rings makes it way more difficult. And the longer the cables, the harder it is as well. This was me working on some Hephaestus or bicep strength, and clearly I was not ready for this kind of movement at that point. Another straddle planche attempt. So from March, when I couldn't even do it for 1 second, to October, I made some really good progress there. Towards the end of 2019, planche and one arm chin up were two of my main goals. I was definitely getting closer to the one arm chin up. Then I thought I'd try some bent arm planche work on the rings. Now doing anything on the rings is automatically going to make it much harder. November, getting very close to a one arm pull up. And this is when I really started incorporating band work into my planche training. I found incorporating bands really took my straddle planche to the next level. I also tried to start training Victorian, which was a bit of a crazy idea, but you know, it was a bit of fun while I did it. The end of 2019, I recorded my favorite push-up variations video. In most of my videos, I have someone who films for me, but sometimes I just have to do it on my own. That was the case here. So what I've done is I've set the camera up in a spot and filmed every variation one at a time. So as the day went on, I got more and more fatigued, and again, I filmed the easiest exercises at the start and the hardest exercises towards the end. Even though I'm only showing 1 to 2 reps of each variation here, I actually filmed 6 to 8 reps to make sure I filmed each exercise for long enough as I would talk about it. And by the time I got to the absolute best push-up variations like weighted push-ups and rings push-ups, I was so fatigued and didn't have much left in the tank. But then somehow I surprised myself and busted out some really good handstand push-ups. At this point my handstand push-ups actually weren't great, but for some reason on this day I actually managed to do some really good ones and some really good deep ones. Deep handstand push-ups are an amazing feat of strength. This segment here I recorded an entire workout that I did. So at the end of 2019, this is what my training looked like. The training was cool, but the biggest problem was that I was training so many things. So this one night I was training planche, cross, Victorian, impossible dip, and Hephaestus. These are all exercises that take years to get and should not be trained together. When it comes to skill training, 1 or 2 skills should be picked, and then you progress really well on them instead of doing 5 skills and hardly progressing on any of them. So after this, I focused on the one-arm chin-up and got it. Then I focused on the straddle planche and I was able to hold it for 10 seconds. Now my focus is the iron cross and it's getting close. Having too many focuses can have the opposite effect from what you're actually trying to achieve. Here I went to an actual gym and you can see my squatting got a lot better than what it looked like in February. The behind the neck press is one of the most controversial exercises in the fitness industry. If you have good shoulder and thoracic mobility and you can overhead press, then you should be okay to give it a go. The final exercise I filmed in 2019 is scap pulls. It's a great exercise for front lever, and the ability to engage your scaps properly is one of the secrets to calisthenics strength. Well, there we go. I made some massive progress in 2019, and little did I know that 2020 would be even bigger training-wise. If you watched this whole video, or even some of it, thank you. I'm not sure if people are actually interested in stuff like this, but if you are, and maybe learn a thing or two, that's fantastic. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and remember, never stop learning.